Alrighty guys, welcome back to the channel here, Floppy Waffles 69, and today we are going to be doing or continuing our down the line series looking at the tier 9 in the alternative branch of DDs. This is the Christopher. Kind of an interesting ship here, a big step up in power compared to our last ship we featured, which was the tier 8 Osborne. And my initial impression of the Christopher is that this ship fucking rocks ass. I really do like this ship, guys. From its firepower, from its consumable loadouts, of what it has a lot of flexibility in every destroyer's dream when it comes to the gun department. Obviously, the torpedoes leave a little bit to be desired, but you are shooting them out in a relatively quick time, though you do only have one launcher, but the reload is fairly quick. I would say that. But again, like we've talked about with this line, from the advantages to disadvantages, obviously you have access to semi-armor piercing on these 137mm guns. You do have that new time-based smoke consumable, which is very nice, which allows you to fall on and off detection when you so choose. So if you do happen to pop a smoke screen, you're not just out of a charge of smoke. You can just turn it off and then turn it back on. Obviously, there is a set activation time, like a minimum amount of time you must have it on before you can go ahead and turn it off. But other than that, you have access to smoke almost 100% of the time, right? I guess some of the big disadvantages of the Christopher is, as you can tell, this is a fairly large ship and it sits fairly high out of the water. So it's not necessarily a hard target to land shells on, I guess would be like the big reason here. So you're gonna have to factor that in too. But again, that must just be a balancing thing because the amount of damage that this thing can pump out is quite notable and quite good. But like we always do in these down the line videos, we're going to look at the ship in the port. We're going to talk a little bit about her stats, showcase what she can and can't do in battle, and give my final thoughts on her at the end of the video, whether or not this one is a nice ship or a bad one. And as you can already tell from what I talked about, this ship is pretty damn strong. I do like her. So starting off, we're going to look at the armor layout. As you can see, this is your standard tier 9 destroyer. There is no improved armor anywhere abouts on this ship. So it is what it is, boys. Moving into the survivability, you do have 20,700 base ship HP. Obviously, this can get buffed with survivability expert and the signal flag. This is sitting towards the upper echelon of tier 9 DDs in regards of its base HP pool. I believe it's sitting around number 5 of getting beat out by ships like the Paolo Emilio, the Felix Schultz, that sort of stuff. So again, it's going to need that HP pool for what it's going to try to do. And because it's fairly large, you're most likely going to be hit by enemy ships. Even if ships blind fire your smoke screen, they have a higher chance at landing shells on this target, on this platform, just because she is a little bit bigger than your average DD. All right, going into the artillery, this is the 3x2 137mm guns, reloading not base. This is because I do run the reload module at the in the 6 upgrade slot, but we are getting it down to 3.6 seconds with a 180-degree turn time of 16.6, and again, maximum range build is going to give us 12.8. Again, if we take this the right commander skills, we go ahead and push this out to, I believe it's 15.1, which again is what I highly recommend you do. Because the guns have a good shell trajectory and flatter arcs than most DDs, you can actually manage to land shells at longer ranges on targets, which is, again, is what you want to do. Because of the way the shells crop and I guess the angle of impact they have on the ship, you are actually able to penetrate a lot of superstructure and or deck depending on certain ships. Obviously, the semi-armor piercing capability of the 137mm shell is only 38mm. So again, just knowing the thresholds of most ships, again, like American battleships, French, Royal Navy, all can be crossed with this threshold. So again, making it an absolute menace to fight these things when you're in those ships. Okay, going to the high explosive, 1,950, big difference there. 8% fire chance with a 23% millimeter armor penetration capability. And again, those shell arcs are coming in at 823 out of the millimeters a second out of the barrels. Again, moving over to the semi-armor piercing, 3,000 base, 38 millimeters of armor penetration capability, and again, tying that of the HE at 823 meters a second. Really not bad, actually. And the firing angles of these guns, I actually find to be relatively nice. You can get this third turret to bear from really steep angles. I would say something similar to like this, showing a slightly smaller angle than you would be if you had to show with other destroyers, like flatter. Again, you're such a big target, you're most likely still going to get struck in return, especially when you find yourself in those DD knife gun fights, right? Moving into the torpedoes, you have the 1x5 launcher here towards the rear end of the ship. This is going to go 10 kilometers with an 85-second torpedo reload time, 16,600-ish maximum damage, 60 knots, and a detectability range of 1.4 kilometers. This is giving the enemy about an 8.7-second reaction time. I do find, though, that the torpedo tubes, as you only have 5 torpedoes going through the water at a time, I actually fairly manage to land a decent amount of torps per game. I would say around 3 would be my average. Just because I'm kind of launching them in general directions of vessels, and because I get them up so quickly, they are reasonably stealthy and hit fairly hard. I am managing to land a decent amount of torpedoes. And again, I don't spec into any torpedo skills on these ships from tier 7 all the way up to tier 10. To me, it's just really just not worth it, right? Why would I want to spec into something that it already is kind of handicapped anyways? When again, the bread and butter of these ships are the guns. That is the main reason you are playing these ships, because the bread and butter of these guns is farm, and do a lot of damage. Glorified damage farmers is what this ship does. This whole line does, and they do it exceptionally well. Okay. AA defense, again, not terrible. As you can see from the model here, the Christopher is loaded in AA batteries. A lot of these quad bullfors and yeah, and these dual purpose 137 millimeter guns as well. They do act as AA batteries. I will say this, the AA isn't terrible at all. I do find myself shooting down a decent amount of aircraft, but the second you cross into tier 10 and super carriers, God forbid, really irrelevant with the AA guys. I mean, that shouldn't come to a surprise to anyone. But again, tier 8 aircraft carriers, I would say be careful. You're still going to get a strike off by all means, but you are definitely going to pay for getting a strike off on this ship, especially, right? And I believe we have only 2 shell explosions in a salvo for our flak. Nothing really to write home about. There are far superior DDs when it comes to AA support, but this ship can hold its own, I believe. Again, I wouldn't really be speccing into AA on this thing. It'd be just an absolute waste. You would indirectly spec into it by taking, you know, the captain skill that can extend your main battery range, because I believe it also adds some AA damage and or flak damage. Moving into the maneuverability, and again, this is something I talked about way back in the Hughes video. By the way, if you haven't caught those videos, the tier 7 Hughes, the tier 7 Osborne, I highly recommend you go back and watch those videos first, because it really sets the foundation of this line, and we've been building it each and every time with each and every tier, right? The big balancing feature of these ships is the maneuverability and the obviously hull size and the rudder shift, right? Those are the 3 things that are kind of holding it back. So I guess you just want to say its maneuverability is kind of what is holding these ships back a little bit and kind of balancing them out. Is it enough? I don't know. It's going to be up to you to decide. You don't really see a whole lot of these ships being played, and I think it just comes down to the awkwardness of the ship, especially when you get to the tier 10, the gun firing angles, how large it is, kind of its concealment values. All of this is kind of a big kind of a challenge for some people to really get a handle of, because most people play this game solo. It kind of can be frustrating every now and then, you know, getting outspotted severely by like shimikazes and stuff like that, right? And with the amount of radar. So I get it. I do get it. So hopefully these videos do help you as we progress later on in these videos. And I do have a pretty damn good battle to show you here in the Christopher later on. But as you can see, maximum speed is 36 knots. Turning circle radius is down to 680 meters. And then the rudder shift time is 4.5 seconds with the build I am running. Obviously, I'm speccing propulsion modification. I'll go ahead and show those upgrades here in a little bit as well, just so we can start and stop in our smoke a little bit better and kind of engine juke to if we do happen to fire in the open ocean, right? A little open water gunboat doesn't hurt. And then again, with our concealment, we are coming in. This is obviously not base. Base concealment value is 7.85 kilometers. Again, with the concealment module, which I highly recommend, takes us down to 7.1 kilometers. And again, with the concealment that you're going to take on your captain, that gets you down to 6.4, which is pretty damn good. That's why I recommend not doing double rudder shift mod on this thing. I have seen it. It is viable if you want to do that kind of like a lighthouse stylish destroyer build. 100% plausible. For me, though, for the average player, I think you're going to get more out of just going full stealth on the Christopher, because 6.4 is still a reasonable amount of detection you can work around too, right? But yeah, guys, that is the Christopher in a nutshell here with just the raw stats of the vessel. Let's go ahead and look at the upgrades real quick. So on the upgrade screen here, I am taking main armaments modification 1, pretty self-explanatory to why I am doing that. In slot 2, like I've been highly recommending you start doing here, take the engine boost modification 1 if you don't mind spending the coal, and the reason why is it gives us 30% more action time on our speed boost. Now, normally I wouldn't really give a fuck, but because we're only 36 knots base, plus the CRM mic, which is going to get us to like 37 point something, this engine boost is a plus 10% speed boost, not your standard plus 8. So you're going to be going a little bit quicker, which means that these relatively slower DDs and how bulky they are really, this is a massive advantage for them to be with their speed boost active. I've thrown off a lot of shells because of how fast these destroyers can move while the speed boost is up. So I want to make sure that I keep that speed boost up for longer. That is my whole thought process here. So that is why I highly recommend you do this. If you are struggling with the Christopher or these ships in general, try taking the engine boost modification. It's only going to help you have a big advantage to your ship up and for longer, okay? A big caveat, though, to this is if you are in your smoke screen going quarter speed, you're fine, but the second you go at a half, or if you're full reverse, you will reverse out of your smoke screen, so please be careful about that. Obviously, going to go over and touch on the smoke screen real quick. Here's all the stats on the smoke screen. You have 180 seconds usage in total. Minimum action time that consumable needs to be up when you activate it is 15 seconds, and that cooldown is 20. Not bad at all, guys, but we do have about 3 minutes. We do exactly have 3 minutes of smoke, which is awesome. That is a lot of time for us to be concealed in our smoke screen and be able to farm from it. I wouldn't say with impunity, but with less chance of taking damage in return. Again, because the action time radius, the smoke dispersion time, and it's kind of not you lay it and it lasts a long time like the mainline branch of the Americans, like the gearing line. This is not really a team-based smoke. This smoke is very much an individualized smoke screen. You can use it as a team if you want to sit right next to your ally, but again, really wouldn't recommend doing that. That's really not what this smoke screen is used for, but I guess in dire situations you can do that if your ally really needs to get out of a pinch, right? Going back to the upgrades, okay, obviously in the 4th slot, we're taking propulsion modification 1. I already touched on this, why I'm doing this. To me, this makes the most amount of sense. The 5th slot, I'm taking concealment modification system or whatever, modification 1. Obviously, we want to get it down to 6.4 kilometers, which is the goal. That is a very nice concealment to have, especially on a gun-heavy focused destroyer. Obviously, you can use the steering gears modification 2, which is going to leave you at 7.1 kilometer detection. And then you can alter your build around that if you so choose. For me, with the way that this ship, I think, wants to be played, I still think 6.4 is a little bit better, and you can make more use of that than going with this double steering gear thing. I really wouldn't do this. You're just purely into the damage farming role. You don't give a flying fuck that you're spotted, and you have that smoke screen at your disposal. I understand it. To me, for the average player, I think you're going to get more use out of a full concealment build. Okay, and then in the last slot, self-explanatory, main battery mod 3, we want to make sure that that DPM we get goes even more. So I think your raw DPM on your semi-armor piercing, let me look at it. I think, yeah, 263,000. Not bad. So it's going to boost it up even more. And then on the contrary, your HE is looking at 171,000. Pretty damn respectable numbers, but the big highlight of these ships is that semi-armor piercing, guys. That is really going to allow you to do a lot of damage quickly to enemy destroyers especially, and enemy cruisers, and even enemy battleships. If you aim the right areas on the ship, as long as you can penetrate 38 millimeters of armor and you're not getting those shatters like on the belt armor and whatnot, you're golden with this ship. You're going to find yourself accumulating a lot of damage quickly and eliminating targets pretty damn reliably too. So, but anyways, guys, like I said, that is the Christopher and the upgrades in the port screen. So let's go ahead and check her out in battle, shall we? Alrighty, guys, and here we are in battle in our Tier 9 American destroyer, the Christopher. here is a little bit of a refresher of my upgrades I have slotted onto this bad boy and the corresponding captain skill tree or upgrades that I take. Pretty self-explanatory on the destroyer build. Again, you take the 4 same perks with the preventative maintenance, last stand, survivability, and concealment. Obviously followed up by the, I always forget what the skill is that extends your main battery firing range and buffs a little bit of your AA with obviously Fearless Brawler, and then Adrenaline Rush because you're most likely going to take damage, right? It does suck. I kind of wish I could also take Expert Marksman or whatever that's Grease the Gears, whatever it's called. But again, beggars can't be choosers. You're only allowed a 21-point commander. Obviously, that is the build I am going for on the ship. I think I only have like a 14 or a 15-point commander. So I don't even have Fearless Brawler yet, so take that with a pinch of salt. Also going to further my DPM. I can churn out downrange by an additional 10% when I am spotted. So, but again, like we always do in the battle, we're going to kind of rush forward in our destroyer, and our Buffalo is kind enough to go ahead and radar the enemy Yugumo. Obviously here I pop my speed boost, so I'm already utilizing my max speed, so this destroyer is going to struggle to get away. Also, I can be a harder target to torpedo, theoretically. And I can potentially throw off enemies' shots with the speed as well. I'm just going to go ahead and try to eliminate this Yugumo, honestly. He's really caught out of position. That radar really did help, and you could just see what my semi-armor piercing is able to do, just absolutely churning out damage on this guy. And of course, if I had Fearless Brawler, he would have been dead, 2 or 3 salvos earlier, and also if I could have aimed a little bit better. But again, this is why we take range. Look at that shell velocity. How quick and how easy it is for me to land shells on that Massachusetts at that range. Now, again, I started with semi-armor piercing. I found myself not getting the amount of damage I wanted to, reliably do to this guy, so I went ahead and just switched to HE. My thought process is, if I go ahead and use HE, I can get a fire set on him, probably a burnout or 2 a damage control party, and also keep him lit for my allies to shoot. Obviously, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Literally, no pun intended, but it's true. So he has, his flat broadside to my allied battleships, who are hopefully going to make him pay for being out of position. Obviously, I also want to point out that I believe they have an AFK York. My guess would be he also just didn't want to fight against tier 9s. So he just quit the battle and went to the next battle, which again, I don't blame him for doing, but like at the end of the day, come on, like don't be a sore loser like that and a pisser, like play the game. You know what I mean? He eventually just gets farmed to death by the Buffalo and myself and some battleships here in a little bit. So that does suck, but I still don't think with what the York's good at, I still don't think he would have reliably allowed the Yugumo to get away and do damage to me at all, just because of how the York is with the shell, floatier shells, and it only has 8 guns on those 210mm guns. I just really don't think he would have been able to really help out his Yugumo a whole lot. The Yugumo was basically dead right when that radar went live, and the Buffalo kept pushing forward, and the Yugumo was spotted, and I just was able to farm him to death. So, but anyways, let's keep going over some pros with the Christopher. And again, the Christopher really carries over like what the Osborne had. The Hughes was a little bit different with the shell velocity, but you really started seeing this improved shell velocity with the Osborne. And now with the Burrows and Christopher, you're really going to start seeing it. You're going to be able to land shells from longer ranges, especially with the best, corresponding upgrades and commander skills. It's going to be easier for you, and you really do turn into that glorified damage roll. I mean, you can just see the amount of damage I'm able to churn out. And again, this could all be 10% better if I would have had Fearless Brawler. Sadly, I don't have that. But again, I also want to showcase to you, like, not everybody has a 21-point commander, and not everyone just flips commanders from ship to ship. Like, some of us actually put a commander on a ship that we have specified for that specific ship and no other ships, right? That's how I play the game, and I enjoy the game that way. Because every commander has their vessel. That's kind of like my thought process. And it's also good to showcase kind of what it takes to get the most out of these ships. And sadly, if you really want to get the most out of the ship, you're looking at no less than a 16-point commander to really get the most out of this vessel. If you have less than a 16-point commander, you're still not playing the ship to what it's fully capable of doing. Okay, that's kind of what I want to highlight to you. So the commander builds, or the ship is kind of commander extensive or commander heavy. You are going to need a higher end level commander to get the most out of her, is what I'm trying to tell you here. Okay. But now before with the Osborne and the Hughes, you really couldn't do this long range damage farming. And now with the Christopher, and especially when I go ahead and showcase the Burrows, you're really going to be able to start coming into your own right, and it's going to allow you to really play that role. Now, On the contrary, I really want to start comparing these ships to the Italian destroyers, who arguably play a similar play style. Okay, in my humble opinion, okay, I think that the Christopher, the Burrows are superior destroyers to that of the Ruggiero and the Adriatico. Because the range on those ships are so short, it's mandatory to go for a longer range build. Theoretically speaking, I don't have to go for a longer range build, but in the meta, how everything is with these radars, subs, and all this stuff, I think that these ships are played longer ranges. You're going to be able to get more out of them, and they're also annoying. I'm sure this Massachusetts is pissing. I mean, I got to be pissing them off, right? And obviously here's the one compensation shell there. Always good to see. But yeah, that's what these ships do, right? But again, the Italians have that get out of free jail card essentially with that fuel exhaust smoke. But in my own opinion, I have a get out of free jail card as well, which is I have that smoke screen that can turn on and off. I think that the Burrows line is just a flat out easier line to play compared to the Italian destroyers, and I just think they're vastly superior. It kind of sucks because they went through the effort of buffing those ships with the ranges and all this stuff, and they can slot the range modification now in the third slot and all this stuff, and then they go ahead and release this line, which in my opinion is just a blatant power creep on that line. Now I'm still saying you can play and have good games in the Italian DDs. I sure as hell do. They're fun. That would be an interesting line to go ahead and showcase to you guys, I'm sure. But if you're looking for a more impactful destroyer and an easier destroyer to play, I think the Burrows line is where it's at, personally. Okay. Moving forward here, showcasing the semi-armor piercing on enemy battleships, and here again we're trying to showcase the AA. You can kind of see, like, even with these tier 8 aircraft carriers, I mean, I'm shooting down planes every now and then, but they're still able to get a strike off, and that's kind of what you're going to have to endure with. Your greatest way to dodge and deal with enemy aircraft carriers is going to be in the forms of your speed boost and your smoke screen. So make use of those, absolutely. It's kind of like blending that of like the daring short burst smoke generator, but just putting it on a better smoke platform in general, because now you're not limited to charges, you're just limited to time, which again, in my opinion, is just vastly superior. So again, but you don't have the hydrocruising search that the daring has, but you really don't need it if you know how to position and read the mini-map accordingly, right? Again, if battleships with 38 millimeters of deck armor are going to be showcasing broadsides like this, by all means, just take full advantage of it with that semi-armor piercing. You can see I'm getting anywhere between 1,800 to around 3,000 damaging semi-armor piercing salvos. It's not uncommon to get those damage totals on ships you can 100% penetrate. And you already saw what I was able to earlier on in the video with the Yugumo, which absolutely demolished that guy in a short span of time, thanks to my Allied Buffalo's radar, right? And just the raw DPM that the ship does come with. And again, you can further increase with certain commander skills and upgrades. Okay, guys, moving into my final thoughts about the Christopher. Night and day, guys. It's just a flat-out upgrade over the Osborne. And I liked the Osborne, so you can only imagine when I'm telling you that I really like this ship, I really like this ship. And again, you can already imagine what I'm going to say about the Burrows. It's a fun ship. The only problem is these ships aren't really played a whole lot. And again, I think it comes down to just the other ships out there really defining the meta, and it's kind of awkward to play some of these ships from time to time again, right? I mean, you do have at least one torpedo tubes like launcher that can help prevent against enemy pushes from like larger caliber ships, but again, what this ship specializes in is its main battery guns doing catastrophic amounts of damage to targets that it can go ahead and penetrate. And if it can't penetrate it, it can go ahead and swap to its HE, which I actually have found myself starting a fair amount of fires with this thing. 8% getting further buffed by the signal flags up to 9 is very, very spicy. And again, mixed with this DPN, you can only imagine. Again, these are 137 millimeter guns, right? So the damage totals by their own right are going to be more. And you're going to notice that right off the get-go. If you are finding yourself playing against these destroyers, I highly suggest you only engage the DDs if you have a massive health advantage or if you have allies supporting you. Because if you don't have either of those two, there's a good chance you're just going to get wiped. Absolutely wiped. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video here of the Tier 9 Christopher. Stay tuned for more content. I'm trying to trickle it out here and there as it goes. Leave a like and subscribe, and I will catch you all guys in the next one. Have a good rest of your day, guys, and peace out.